Hi everybody, my name is Grazia and welcome to this fun and exciting video today. So this video is going to be about how to make your own chunky knit sweater, and I'm going to walk you through all the different steps, everything you'll need, different techniques that you'll use in a very fun way. I'm not going to do a tutorial like my last video because I've realized that I'm not very good at that and like keeping my hands in the center of the frame, and so we're just going to do like a more chill vlog style tutorial because I think that will be better for both of us. And if you're not interested in making a sweater, I hope this is a fun vlog for you because I will be making a chunky sweater. And so it's just a knitting vlog. Or if you want to make a sweater yourself, then I hope this is everything that you wanted. In this video, I'm going to have different sections. So the first section, I'm going to talk about the materials that you will need. The next one, I'm going to talk about the yarn that you need and just kind of like how to pick out the yarn and everything kind of related to that. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the gauge swatch because a gauge swatch is very important to make sure that your sweater is as chunky and oversized as you want it and that it fits still. And then throughout the entire video, I'm just gonna show you the process on how to make a sweater. So we are going to be making a Raglan style sweater today because I believe that you can have never knit a thing in your life and the first thing that you make can be a sweater. Hopefully that is accurate and you're not watching this and you're like, what the heck is she doing? And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the materials. I want to share with you some of the materials that you are going to need for your sweater. So first, of course, you're going to need some yarn. I just harvested this from a sweater, which I will show you in the next part where I talk about the yarn, and I'll talk more about like the details of the yarn that you're going to need. The next thing that you're going to want is circular knitting needles. It is a plus if they're interchangeable, so like if they can screw off and then screw back on again. My needle brand is Chiaogu. I don't actually know how to say it, but these were my very first set of needles. And I'm pretty sure they were just from like Hobby Lobby or something. These are not interchangeable though, so you're like stuck with this cord. It's helpful if you have interchangeable needles because you can get different size cords so that when your sweater grows, you can change the cord and knit off of a longer cord. Or if you're knitting in the round and you're ready to start doing the hem and you need to switch needle sizes, you can just have all of your stitches on your cord and then screw off the needle and put the other one on. Anyways, it's up to you. There's options for both. I'm going to be using interchangeable needles because that's what I have best. I just want to add a few notes on other options regarding the knitting needles. If you want to buy just fixed circular knitting needles, here are just examples of some options. Here's some from Hobby Lobby, here's some from Michael's. You can probably also find some from Amazon, but I recommend purchasing a interchangeable circular needle set because you might be paying around $10 for 2 needles, or you pay $20 for a set of needles that are interchangeable and you have different options of cords and needle sizes. Though honestly, that would be my suggestion to you because personally I think it's more cost effective because my hope is that you love this sweater and you realize how fun and easy knitting can be, and then you have a set of interchangeable needles to knit whatever you want. So that's just my recommendation. I will put the link to this cheapest interchangeable circular needle set that I found in the description, and I'll also put the link to the needles that I use, which are a bit of an investment. And if you are locked in on knitting and you're going to become a knitter, it really doesn't hurt to start off with them. They're amazing needles. They're awesome. But I also started with a cheap set from Amazon, so just that I would add that in there. Thank you. The ones that I recommend today for this pattern are going to be 8mm needles, which is a US 11, and you're also going to want to get 6mm needles. which is a US 8, I want to say. So that's what you want. You also want to have scissors, a tapestry needle or a darning needle, which is just to like weave in the loose ends. You want to have stitch markers, which you don't even need to buy stitch markers. You can literally have like scrap yarn. So like for example, because I knit, I do have scrap yarn, and so like this here is scrap yarn. Scrap yarn you can just like tie around where I show you that you need the stitch markers, and so it just helps you to kind of like separate different parts of your knit so that when you get to it, it's marked and you already know what to do when you get to it. You can also use earrings, the earrings that like open and close, anything like that. You can put those earrings over around the loop, which I'll also show you, just the generalness of what you need to do with a stitch marker, and if you have anything that you can use for it, then you use that. So I think that's all the materials that you need. So now I'm going to talk to you about the yarn. I harvested this from a sweater, which I am just going to jump a little bit back in time and show you how I did that, and just like maybe details about that you might want to know. I need to do a little bit of something because this is going to be the yarn that I am going to use, but I need to unravel it first because it's not very useful in this setting. So I just want to share that I think knitting a sweater can be very affordable because I found the sweater at Plato's Closet. It was only $12. I do feel like I have never found yarn at a thrift store that has really like spoken to me or anything, either because it's like really small and looks very machine made or just some other different factors. But this yarn, it is 100% cotton. I'm a big fan of natural fibers, and it's chunky. Like, it's a very chunky yarn, as you can see. And so before I give you any details about this yarn, I need to first figure out the details. And so I'm just going to start by harvesting the yarn from the sweater, which I've never done before, and we'll see how it goes. I've seen some videos on it. Oh, look at that. It's literally, oh, that's crazy. I just started talking about this and all of a sudden I found a loose end. I think I'm just gonna figure it out. I'm gonna switch to my smaller camera so I can more easily situate you so you can see what I'm doing. To unravel the sweater, I think I'm gonna need my scissors, and we're just gonna set up right here because I can put you anywhere. It's pretty crazy though, actually, that as I started like literally saying I was gonna unravel this, it started unraveling. But here you can kind of see like the thickness of the yarn. It doesn't also look very high quality because it is like fraying, but so I will note the one difficult thing about harvesting yarn is that you could play a game of yarn chicken, which is knitting terminology that means that you are like down to your very last bits of yarn and you don't know if you'll finish, and so you might have to like play yarn chicken and either order more yarn, take yarn out of something to add it to something else just to finish something. Something about this sweater, I had asked the amazing people that follow me to let me know like what they think of this sweater and if I should frog it or just like harvest the yarn from it or not. And a bunch of people said like not to do it because the color is really beautiful. But I mean, what's so lovely about this is that even if the color is really beautiful, like the color will still stay the same and I'll just make something nicer. Okay, so this is like, what the heck's happening right now? There's a lot of like extra yarn. It's like falling apart, guys. The way that we're going to be knitting this sweater is completely in the round. So it's nice because the only stitch you'll need to do is the knit stitch. Also, 2 different increases, which are very easy, and I will show you a substitute just in case like you're like, what the heck is that? This is also just like a little disclaimer. This is also the most basic possible way to make a sweater. So it is not going to have the most perfect fit. It's not going to be like the most tailored beautiful sweater ever because there are different techniques like German short row shaping that help. Okay, this is annoying. Okay, so this is seamed all the way through. I'm just gonna unseam this and like cut out all of these seams because we're gonna get different panels. pretty crazy. I undid it all, and I think if you're going to go with this option, take the panels apart. So I have a full panel here, I have a full panel here, and then 2 more full panels right here. And from that, I think I can just start like winding up my yarn. Another option for if you want to go about this method is, a lot of time, I don't think sweaters at the thrift store have this super chunky yarn that is being used. And so what you can do, if you feel so inclined, which will probably take a lot more work, but you can buy multiple sweaters and then take all the yarn out of all of them, which probably would take a lot of time, and hold multiple strands together. And so I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about the gauge, which shows you how many stitches are in 4 inches or 10 centimeters, which is very important if you're working from a pattern or just trying to self-draft something and figure out the size that will fit you. Okay, looks like we got a ball here. So I have a little bit of hope for this because the way that this is knit, it's been knit in seed stitch, which is, it takes up, okay, this is not gonna be okay if we're only having this much yarn. Okay, frick. Hold on. I'm getting nervous. Okay, I finished winding up all of my yarn. Look at these big balls, they look like little eggs. And then all of this like scraps, like that's, I don't think I can do much with that, but it'll be helpful just in case of anything. But here's a lot of yarn I harvested, and this is all like the discards, like that's what did not make it out of the yarn. So if this is something that you do, maybe this is just an expected amount of loss, I guess. And so now next steps are going to be knitting up a gauge swatch to see the thickness of this yarn. Now that we did that, if you want to do that, that's great. It might not be the thing I recommend as the first thing to do when you're knitting a sweater, just because it's a little bit harder to, like, you can see my yarn is a bit crimped. There are ways to fix that, like steaming all of the yarn, but this is actually my first time doing this, so I'm not sure. I would recommend buying yarn. And there are so many affordable options for yarn. One that comes just like to the top of my mind is this brand Drops. They have very affordable yarn. Another option is to go to like a local craft store. You can go to Hobby Lobby, Michael's, and find some yarn. There's plenty of different options. Personally, I like natural fibers, so I like cottons or wools, but acrylic is a very affordable and accessible option, especially since that's like the only thing I see in craft stores these days. So really, whatever floats your boat and whatever you feel most comfortable in, I say you get. So when choosing the yarn, I found out the gauge of this yarn. So the gauge of a yarn is how many stitches are in 4 inches or 10 centimeters. What I did to do that is you knit up a swatch. And so a swatch is like a little square piece of fabric using your yarn and then measuring how many stitches you get per inch or per centimeters. So what I typically do, because this is not 4 inches wide, I measure 2 inches and then just double that. And so the gauge for this is 12 stitches. When you buy a yarn, to best mimic the results of my pattern, I recommend finding a yarn that has a gauge of 12 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters. I'm going to put some recommendations here on the screen of different yarns that I would get. I think the most important thing is when you're buying this yarn to look at the gauge of the yarn. It will help you get the best yarn for the pattern, because all the patterns, every single pattern, knitting pattern, has a recommended gauge. So my recommended gauge is 12 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters. If you want to get a lighter yarn and still use this needle size, that'll work. If you want to get a heavier yarn and still use this needle size, it'll work. If you get a heavier yarn, which means the gauge will be lower, so it'll be like 8 to 10 stitches per 4 inches, then the fabric will be much denser. If you get a lighter yarn, such as like 14 to 16 per 10 centimeters, it will be much of a tighter fabric. And so once you get your yarn, I recommend just gauge swatching. Since you might be watching this and you might be a beginner knitter, gauge swatching is not going to do you much if you only got one type of yarn and you only got one type of needles, because you can't really change much if you don't have much. Anyways, I think that's it about the gauge swatch. This is the yarn I'm going to be using, and these are going to be my needles, and I'm going to just draw out a little design on what the pattern is going to be like. So you can join me for that. So the sweater that we have today is going to be like I quite like this brown that I have. So it is going to be a Raglan sweater, which means it is worked seamlessly. And there's a few options, because when we start, we're going to start with the collar right here. That is going to be very customizable. If you want a very long turtleneck, you're going to knit that part for a while. If you want a mock neck, you knit that for a little bit. And so however much you knit is however much is going to be on your neck. So I want to kind of mimic the one that I had before I frogged this sweater. So it's kind of a halfway. And this is going to be in ribbing. And then that is done. And then we're going to start increasing in the round for the sleeves. We're going to be doing 8 increases every other round, which is going to consist of a make one left and a make one right. So I'll show you how to do that, of course, but it's all in the round. And so slowly your sweater will grow out like this. And I'm going to provide 2 different cast on measurements. The first stitch count I'm going to give you is from a small to medium oversized sweater, and then the second one is going to be from a large to extra large plus sweater. And so you're going to start off then increasing. And so what happens when you increase is you start to create these seams where then the sweater grows outwards. And so it'll get to a certain point where you try it on and you're like, this is good, I like how this fits, because you'll be able to pinch these seams that you'll have created right underneath the arms. And once it's at a point where it's comfortable, that's when you know you set the sleeves to the side. And I'm going to show you all of this. I'm going to show you how to do it all. So you'll be increasing until a point that you're like, okay, this is good. And then you're going to set the sleeves to the side. Let's put the sleeves on. We'll complete those together too. And then you just knit the body. And so it'll be like this type of sweater. And it'll be so wonderful and so easy, and I know you can do it. And then at the bottom we're going to add a little bit of ribbing, which is super easy. It's just doing every other stitch differently. That is the sweater that we're going to be making. Very easy sweater, very simple. There are options, which I'm not going to cover in this video because I think that's too complicated for me to cover right now, where there are German short row shapings that are done. And so what those do, because anatomically there's more space on your back than there is your neck. So like, let me just do a quick little, so like here's your back, right? This is not a very good drawing, but like that makes sense, right? Anyways, so there's more space right here. You add extra shaping right here, extra rows that makes the neck sit up higher so that it can sit at a good spot right here, as opposed to doing something that might look a little bit more like this. You see what I'm saying? So that is what we're going to be making. I will add a PDF down below in the description that will be some sort of like just this document that I'm creating to show you, just in case you want to, like, you watch this video and you understand it and then you put the actions to and you can follow a written pattern. And this is step number 1. We're going to cast on 60 stitches for a small to medium oversized and 72 stitches for a large to extra large oversized sweater. And you're going to be doing this on 6mm needles. And then you're going to knit and ribbing, which I'll show you ribbing, for however long of a length you want the neck to be. Oh, I think my Apple Pen just died. Okay, it died. I'll continue. Now we're going to cast on. I will show you the cast on method that I use, which is called the long tail cast on method. If I don't explain something really well, I am adding links to all of these different methods in the description. These are all links that I probably watched and looked up when I was learning how to knit. So if it worked for me, I hope it'll work for you too. I am not using 6mm needles. I am using 6.5mm needles, which is a US 10.5. So I made a mistake, and this is what I'm going to be using to cast on. So to begin, the long tail method involves casting on with 2 different strings, which means the first bit before the slip knot has to be enough to cast on 60 stitches is how many I'm going to be casting on. This is probably where I recommend you go watch another video, but I'm going to try to walk you through what I'm doing. To approximate how much yarn I'm going to need before I make my slip knot, I wrap it around 10 times. And so this is approximately 10 stitches, and then I take that off and I like do this. That's 20, and then I just do that. This is 30, 40, 50, 60. It's sometimes better to have a longer tail than it is to have a shorter tail, because you might not actually even end up with a tail. So now you make a slip knot, which is just, I'll show you really quick how I do my slip knot. Here, right? Make a little cross, and then you just pull like that. Hopefully that made sense. And then the long tail cast on method, I'm holding both of my pieces of yarn like this, and I'm gonna go under this one right here and over this one. I just lost all my stitches. I have my stitches here. I'm like putting my hand through my yarn like this and just like grabbing onto that. And so I'm taking my needle and I'm going under this side right here, over this side, and pulling it through. Under this side, over this side, and pulling it through. So right now I have 3 stitches on my needle, and you're just going to continue doing this till you have 60 or 72 if you're making a larger size. Okay, so now I have my 60 stitches on my needles. You're going to want to cast on 1 extra stitch so that you can join seamlessly in the round. So to do so, your stitches might feel a little bit tight when you try to do this. You're going to bring your stitches all the way over to the other side of your needle. So what you're going to do, you're going to take this stitch right here, you're going to put it onto your other needle, right? And then you're going to take this stitch that your yarn is immediately attached to, you're going to pick it up and you're going to drop it over that stitch you just put on your needle. You're going to put it over, and so then you just drop that stitch off. Hopefully I didn't just lose you there. Now you have everything connected in the round, and you're going to place your first stitch marker. This here is what my stitch markers look like. My sister got them for me. You're just going to place it on your needle. So the first thing that I'm going to do to just even out all of these stitches is knit 1 round. And so that's easiest to do. Let me show you how you knit a stitch. So there is the front loop and then there's the back loop. You're going to put your needle into the front loop, you're going to go from front to back, and then you're going to take your yarn and loop it counterclockwise around your right needle, and then you're going to pull that stitch through. Okay, let's do it to the next one. You go in from the front to the back of the front loop, wrap your yarn counterclockwise around that needle, and then you're going to pull that yarn through those loops. Okay, I'm going to take you off my shoulders because you might be getting dizzy. You're just going to knit all of your stitches. So whenever you cast on, your stitches are always kind of like tight on your needles, and so I think knitting a round or two really like helps loosen them up. So I have knit 2 rounds in just a regular knit stitch, and I showed you how to do a knit stitch. Now I'm going to show you how to do a purl stitch. And so the combination of doing a knit and then a purl, a knit and a purl, creates a ribbed texture, and that is what majority of like necklines, hems, cuffs of sleeves are made up of. So let me show you how to rib. So here, let's do 1 knit stitch, and now for the purl stitch, you're going to take your yarn and you're going to move it to the front of the needle, the front of your work, and instead of going in through the front loop to the back, you're going to go in from the side to the other front side of the front loop. So you're going to do that, and you're going to take your yarn and wrap it around and bring it out on the other side. Now to do that again, here's a knit stitch. Put the yarn back behind the work, and for the purl stitch, you're going to bring it back into the front. You're going to go through this front leg from right to left and wrap the yarn around. Okay. And that'll start to create a ribbed texture, which I'll show you after a few minutes. This is currently where the neckline is sitting for me. I think I'm going to do 1 more row of ribbing, and then I will show you how you set up your next round to start increasing for the sleeves to make it that nice oversized sweater. I don't know why my voice got all scratchy. I tried to cough it out, but I couldn't. If you're able to, I highly recommend trying this on as you knit throughout every step of the process. One thing that you can use is scrap yarn, so you can slide all of your stitches off onto a scrap yarn and use that. Or I have this thing called barber cord, which if you think you're gonna love knitting and you make this one sweater, then you're gonna be a knitter, which I highly recommend. You should get some barber cord, which just is like this small hollow silicone tube that you just put onto the end of your needles, and it stays pretty well, and you can slide some of your stitches off just to create some more room, and then slide them right back onto your needles and keep knitting. It's a great way to like save time and check how it's going without also having to like put all of my stitches onto scrap yarn and then put them back on the needles. It's a little bit difficult sometimes. So I really recommend barber cord if you think this is a long time endeavor for you, which you should consider it, because this hobby is amazing and it's an art. So I'm gonna keep ribbing for 1 more row. I got to the end of my row. So what we're gonna do now is you're only going to knit and you're gonna start working on the body where you increase every other round. But first, you need to switch your needles to your larger needles. If you're using interchangeable needles like this, you just screw them off and put the larger needles on your needle. And you're only going to be knitting this time. You're going to be knitting in the round while placing stitch markers. So I'll put on the screen how many times you knit, and then you're going to place a marker, which is PM. You're going to knit 1, you're going to place another marker, and then you're going to knit X amount. I'm going to be using Cocoa Knits stitch markers, which are really cute. For the first size, the smaller size, you're going to knit 14. You're going to place 1 stitch marker on your needles. You're going to knit 1 stitch. You're going to place another stitch marker, and now you're going to knit 28. "27, 28. You're going to do the same thing that you did. Take 1 stitch marker, place it, knit 1, take another stitch marker and place it. And now you're going to knit 14, which should bring you back to your first marker, your beginning of round marker, which hopefully is a different color. And it's going to be the only one that's by itself. You're only placing 4 markers, but you're increasing 8 times. So these increases are going to be on either side of every single stitch marker. So it's like 2 increases per stitch marker, which equals 8. So we got to the beginning of round, and now this is going to be our first increase row. So you're going to knit to your first stitch marker. So I have gotten to my first stitch marker. Let me show you how I make one right. So you're going to knit to 1 stitch before the marker. The first thing that you do is going to be a make one right. So you're going to go from the back to the front, and you're going to knit into this front leg from the front to the back. Okay? You've increased 1 stitch. Now you're going to knit this stitch. You're going to slide this stitch marker over. Now you're going to make 1 left. So you now go in from the front to the back of that middle bar, and then you're going to knit into the back leg of this stitch. So sometimes I need to go under this way and back around and then knit that. Okay, you did your first raglan increase. Now you're going to knit this middle one, and you're gonna make 1 right again. Okay, now you're going to knit into this front leg. They're always a little bit difficult. If it doesn't feel difficult, then you're probably not doing it right. Then you're going to bring your yarn through. Now you have 3 stitches in between the stitch markers. You're going to slip this over. You're going to knit 1. Now you're going to make 1 left. So you go from the front to the back, and you're going to knit the back loop into the back loop. It's a little bit difficult. Okay, now you've increased 4 stitches. You're going to get all the way around to the other side and do this again. So if the increases are really difficult for you, another option that you can do is that when you're knitting and you get to the point where you need to do an increase, instead of picking up this bar down below, you can do something that is called a yarn over. So you just wrap your yarn around to the front of your needle and then knit regular. And so, for example here, if I do that, there's this yarn over, which isn't actually a stitch, but now creates a stitch when the next round you just knit. So that will create eyelets within the work, and it will still grow into a proper sweater, and it'll just take away the difficult make one right and make one left. So now you know how to make one right and make one left. What you're going to be doing now for a long time is knitting the raglan increases. So you're going to increase every other row. So first row is an increase. You're going to increase by 8 stitches. The next row is just going to be knitting. So you're going to slip all of the stitch markers and you're just going to knit all of either your yarn overs or your increases. This is the point where it gets kind of mindless, because you can just knit in the round until you get to increases. So you just have to make sure you're keeping track of every other row you're doing increases. It might be helpful if you have like a little stitch counter. This is where you can like mark what row you're on, or if you want to like do a tally, so like every even row you increase, every odd row you knit. Yeah, just there's different ways to kind of keep track of it. Just make sure you're keeping it steady, because if you mess it up a little bit, it could look a little wonky. And make sure you're increasing in the right areas, because otherwise that could also make it look wonky. So I'm just gonna knit in the round for a little bit and update you a little bit later and show you how it's going. And hopefully yours is going well too. Hello, good evening. Here is how my sweater is looking. All I'm doing is just knitting in the round, increasing every other row. And right now I've worked 12 increases. And I'm gonna add a little bit of barber cord to just show you how yours approximately will look at 12 increases. Okay, this is how it looks like in the round. So you can see right here, this is growing outwards, it's like becoming a triangle. This becomes the sleeve. So you can really tell when I hold it like this. You see it growing right here, and this will start to form like the sleeve area. And so I can just try it on actually. So here's how it looks, just like a cozy little sweater. So this is how it's going right now. I still have a good bit to go, because like as you can see, there's not enough space to even create a sleeve. So I need to keep going until pretty much like it's far down enough where for one I can like pinch this on both sides to kind of connect a sleeve, just to create an oversized fit, because the whole thing that we're making is a comfortable, oversized, easy raglan sweater. So chunky is the word. So yeah, this is how it's looking. I'm quite pleased with it. It's quite cute. Okay, I'm just going to knit for a little bit. So maybe you can knit with me. Hello. It's been a total of like 5-ish hours of working on my chunky sweater. And another helpful tip is, if you want to place a stitch marker on either side of this one stitch that you don't ever increase directly from, that sometimes is a little bit more helpful, because I found that as I'm knitting, I'm trying to figure out, is this inside the sleeve, is this outside of the sleeve? It is likely also that you may be knitting using a much smaller cord, that it's like bunching up like this and you can't see it. So I have increased 20 times. So I've worked a total of 40 rows, and you can count like on the side right here, every new row is an increase. So I just count from like the first increase all the way here, and I have 20 increases. Maybe if you like the fit of this, aim for around 20 increases. If you want it to be more oversized, do more than 20 increases, think like 24-ish, and then just keep going up as you go. I know how tedious it is to put all of your stitches onto yarn and then take it off. So if you want to just keep it on your needles, that's okay. And you can just hope and trust that our fabrics are very similar. The next step after this is going to be putting the arms on hold. And then is really when you can start to see it take shape, because right now it's just like a big circle growing bigger. And the raglan part takes the longest because you're increasing 8 stitches every other round. You're doing that and you're getting more and more and more stitches, so the rows go slower and slower and slower. But then trust me, once you're done with all of those raglan increases, it goes by so quickly because you'll be working with like a half or a third of the amount of stitches. This here is how it looks. It looks like a big circle with a neck, a hole in the middle. And look at this now. So this is like flaring. It's obviously not going to flare, but think of like right here and here are going to be the sleeves, but we're gonna add a little bit of space under there. So this is kind of the general look of how it's going to be. So I decided to add one more increase, and now I'm happy with it. I'm not going to try it on because that's a little bit extra. Now I'm going to show you what to do once you've reached that width in your body that you like. You have gotten to your beginning of round stitch marker. That is your first stitch marker. You're going to knit to the first one that you placed. So not the one that's the beginning of the round, but you know what I'm talking about. Technically it's going to be your second stitch marker. I have now gotten to that stitch marker, so I'm going to remove it, and then you're going to take either your spare, your scrap yarn, or whatever you want to use to hold your stitches. And I'm using this so it's a little bit easier, but if you're using scrap yarn, just thread it through a needle and then put it through all of the stitches that are on your left needle up until your next stitch marker. So all of the stitches that make up that first smaller triangle, you're going to put on hold, is what we call them in knitting. So all I do for this is I put this on the end of my needle, and then I just literally slide all of them off. Not all of them. Now that all of these stitches are on hold, you're also going to remove this second stitch marker because you're not going to need that. And then you're going to use the backwards cast on method, and you're going to cast on stitches that will make up the underarm on your right needle. I'll add a link to a video that shows you how to do the backward loop cast on method, but you're going to take your yarn and you're going to cast on 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I pretty much go under the loop closest to me and scoop the other loop and then just bring it through. And that's 5 stitches. So now you're just going to continue knitting as regular till you get to the next stitch marker, which you should have a total of 3 left. 2 of them make up the next arm. I have just about gotten to the next stitch marker right here, and I'm going to remove it and then do the same thing on this side, where I then take all of the stitches in between the stitch marker that I just took off, so all the stitches on my left needle. I'm going to slide them all off up until the next stitch marker. Okay, slid it off, remove that last stitch marker, and then this is going to be the left underarm, and you're going to do the same thing you did to the right underarm, and using the backwards loop method, cast on 5 stitches. Okay, and now I'm just gonna knit to that beginning of round marker. All right, now I just want to show you it really comes to life once you put the arms on hold, because you can start to see it becoming a sweater. So you can see the arms are right here, and now pretty much what you're gonna do is you're literally just going to knit. You're going to keep knitting round and round and round and round, and just knit it until you like the length of it and it's as big as you want it to be. So yeah, I'm just gonna knit now for a little bit, and I hope you enjoy your just plain knitting time, no increases. Hello everybody. It is currently now, I don't even know if I remember if I was speaking about the days, but right now it's currently Thursday. But the last step in the sweater that I talked about was you're joined the body in the round and you just knit, knit. But you want to try it on every so often just to like check the length, see how you like it. And so I've come to a point right now where I like the length of it. It's important to know that once it gets to a point like right here, I want it obviously to be a little bit longer, but I know I'm going to be adding like another 2 inches of ribbing onto it, and so I account for that when I look at it. And so I'm going to start ribbing now. The ribbing is the same thing that you did for the neckline. You're going to do a knit, a purl, knit, purl, knit, purl all the way around, and you want to size down your needles. So I have been using an 8, and I used a 6.5 millimeter needle on the neckline, so I'm going to use a 6.5 millimeter needle on the hem. That's what you do. And ultimately, if you're knitting it and you're like, I want this to be a little bit longer, then you can do that. And so I think I'm gonna do the same like rolled edge right here, where I started with like 2 knit rows, and then I started doing the knit, purl, just because I kind of like that look, and the original sweater had that, so that's what I want to do again, I think. Let's go knit, I guess. Voiceover Vera, because I was at home and hanging out with family, and I didn't want to just stop mid hanging out to record this. Pretty much now we are going to bind off the hem once it's at a length that you're happy with. To do that, you're going to knit 2, then pass the one on the right over the one that you just knit. Once you do that, you're going to only then knit 1 and then take the one that is further on the right and pass it over the one that you just knit. And you're going to continue doing this until all of your stitches are bound off. Now I'm going to show you how to start working on the sleeve. So you're going to start off by slipping all of the stitches you put on hold onto your needle. You'll be working on 8 millimeter needles again, just in case you forgot. When doing this, you want to make sure that you're getting every single one of the stitches onto your needles. Otherwise, you may lose some stitches and it might be hard to go back and get them. So once you have slipped on all of those needles, you are going to then pick up 5 stitches or however many you cast on at the underarm. So when you're going to pick up the stitches, you want to locate all of the V's. You're going to put your needle through the 2 loops at the top and wrap your yarn around your needle as if you are knitting a stitch, but just pull that through and you have created 1 stitch. You're going to do that for all 5 stitches across. I ended up picking up 6 because it would help close a little hole that would form at the underarm just in the space where there would be a stitch, so feel free to do that too. You're also going to want to place a stitch marker in between the stitches that you picked up. So I would pick up 3, place my stitch marker on my needles, and then pick up 3 more. Once you have all of your stitches picked up, all of your stitches that were on hold on your needles, you're then just going to begin knitting in the round. And there are a few options when you're working on the sleeve. You can either just knit in the round and don't do any decreases, so you end up with a very straight, wide sleeve, which definitely has that oversized look, but I'm going to be adding some decreases in my arm, really just because I was nervous I was not going to have enough yarn, and so by adding in these decreases, I could make sure my arms got smaller. I will put on the screen how I did that exactly, but pretty much on every 7th row, I decreased 2 stitches. So I knit 1 past the stitch marker, I knit 2 together, and then I knit up until 3 stitches before the stitch marker, and I knit 2 more together to then decrease 2 stitches total. And that is pretty much it when it comes to the rest of the knitting on the sleeve. You're either going to just continue knitting straight, or you're going to add the decreases in every 7th row. And you're going to knit until it becomes the length that you want, and you're going to finish off by ribbing the same way that you did for the hem. Hi everybody! Sorry if you hear Mario music in the background. There's obviously Mario Kart playing. Anyways, I have been working on the sleeves for a few days. Actually, 2 days. I started 2 days ago, but then realized that when I was videoing, if you can see, I was using 9mm needles, which was a complete accident, and you're actually just supposed to use 8mm needles. And so I had to completely undo the arm. Literally, like, one arm has taken me 1 day because it's such thick yarn, and it goes by so quick. There are things you can do when knitting the arm. Just so. If your cord is not long enough, and that's called the magic loop, which is this weird thing that I'm doing right here. And I don't think I would be very good at explaining how to do magic loop, so I'm gonna link a video down below, and it'll just show you how to do magic loop and explain what happens. And so at this point, it's so much easier to try on because the body's already done and the arms are definitely on needles that you can fit your arms around. So you just knit the arms in the round until they get to your desired length, and then you do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm almost done. I'm so close to being done, and I'm almost done with my arm, so I'll let you watch for a little bit. So I finished my sweater a few days ago, and that pretty much wraps up this video. This is what my sweater looks like in the end, and I love it so much. I'm so happy that I made this, and I'm glad I did not run out of yarn. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you if you were trying to make your own sweater. As always, if you have any questions at all, comment them down below. I will do my best to help you in any way. My dog jumped on my bed. I'll do my best to help you in any way that I can. You also can find me on Instagram and on TikTok, but if you find me on Instagram and you have any questions, message me and I'm so happy to respond. I always love to respond to any DMs or anything. This is not the most advanced tutorial, but if this was your very first sweater, you should tag me on Instagram because I'd love to see what you made. And this is a good base for everything else that you'll do within, this is a good base for any other thing that you want to knit because you're a knitter now. You're officially a knitter. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you love the sweater. It's such a chunky, fun, casual sweater, and I love it so much. It is much nicer than the sweater I had before, and it's handmade now. That's all for my video. Thank you so much for watching. This has been my longest video yet, So I hope you enjoy your fall if I don't see you again, but if you want to see more of my videos, I have some fun ones coming up. Just different project vlogs on my own projects that I'm making, and designing vlogs because I have a few patterns I want to design. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like it if you enjoyed it, and maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos of mine. Until then, thank you, and I hope you have a lovely, beautiful rest of your day. Mwah!